What's up, guys? Welcome back to Star Wars Collecting and Hobbies. Today we have another news video, something that a lot of people have been asking about in all the groups, all the fan sites. Where is the new Wave 2 Star Trek Universe figures? Now, if you're not familiar with the figures, I'll put in another picture of a couple of the Wave 1 figures. Maybe a couple of the items that have already been released. But this is what's going on. So let's just do a brief recap. We're just going to go through the whole entire thing and come to the conclusion of hopefully where the Wave 2 figures are coming from. Okay, guys, so I'm not sure when it was, maybe early 2022, Playmates, I guess, announced that they had the license to produce Star Trek figures in roughly a 4-inch scale. These figures have more articulation than the classic figures that came out from Playmates back in the 90s. So these figures are pretty well liked. A lot of people liked them. They were doing some kind of new technology, some kind of UV light scan or something they were talking about to do the faces. And recently we have been getting, to some extent, new figures. They're actually just the re-release of the Wave 1 figures that they put out in 2022, but with a different type of technology for the faces. Now, we've also got some new stuff coming out that's already been released within the last couple of months, so we'll get to that in a little while. But let's go ahead and recap what happened in Star Trek Playmates toys in 2022. So in 2022, in early 2022, they announced that there would be some figures coming in the summer or the fall. So people were expecting them to hit sometime in June or later, some maybe in August. And that is when they actually started to appear in stores, online retailers, etc. Target was like the first store in America, other than maybe some e-tailers. They might have got some like comic book shops, but as far as I know, Target was the first one to actually get them. Amazon was getting them in small quantities of just certain figures because they get them by the case of each figure, not an assortment. So there was I believe Captain Kirk, the Wrath of Khan Kirk, which is actually Admiral Kirk, for the 40th anniversary of Wrath of Khan. There was technically three figures for that particular entertainment, and then there was three figures for the Next Generation, and then two figures for Star Trek Discovery. Each one of these had different types of cards. The Next Generation ones look like the Next Generation ones from the 90s, but the card is a little bit smaller. The classic Star Trek figures from Wrath of Khan, they also looked very familiar. And the Discovery, obviously, those were new, and that was something that carried over throughout Europe and other countries. And the Star Trek Discovery cards were actually used to card the other figures that were from classic Star Trek and the Next Generation as well, if you didn't live in North America. But, alright, so we had a case of 8 figures, basically. Also with that, we also had a Star Trek Classic Phaser and the Star Trek Classic Enterprise. So all of those came out around the same time, between August and roughly like, October. By the end of October, they were really starting to pick up steam, and they were easier to get, and they were coming in and out of stock within a couple of days. Anything you ordered on Amazon would ship to you within a couple of days. And they've been on the site in stock for the most part pretty much the whole last year. They would sell out, come back into stock, sell out, come back into stock. They've been they've been readily available. All right, so let's talk about Playmates and what they actually said at conventions and in interviews and stuff like that. People were asking, are these just anniversary figures? Which to some extent didn't make any sense, because the Discovery figures weren't celebrating, I don't think, any kind of anniversary, and neither was the Next Generation. These came out in 2022. Well, Next Generation, yeah. So, anyway, classic Star Trek 40th anniversary for Wrath of Khan. That was the only anniversary, I believe, that was being celebrated. And they very specifically said that this is not the end. If these are, they had more plans to do a full line, basically. They had more vehicles, at least a couple more ships that they wanted to do, a couple more role play items that would be following out next year, the current next, which would be 2023, and more figures, and of course, they did mention a little bit more sales. The more popularity, the more likely it'll keep going. But they did say that they had the license for a couple more years. So they did very specifically say that they have plans for the line over the next few years. So at Toy Fair in London, and I guess January 2023 or something like that, they showed the figures that you're looking at on your screen. You got Worf, Geordi, 7 and 9, Q, Captain Pike, and I believe the blue one is a version of Spock. Now, there were speculations before this that Geordi and Worf would be in Wave 2, and they did say that there was a possibility that Captain Pike would be released, and possibly another version of Kirk or Spock, a more classic version, instead of the Admiral's suit that he's wearing in Wrath of Khan, because everybody would obviously want that kind of a figure, and a regular looking Spock in his blue shirt, and obviously those would sell very well. So the anticipation for Wave 2, originally the people in the groups were stating online that they were thinking it was going to be Geordi, LaForge, possibly Counselor Troy, and Dr. Gates McFadden's character, Dr. Crusher, and maybe, a Kirk and a Spock, and maybe a couple Discovery figures or something to that extent. The Next Generation ones were selling better than the classic figures. Now, these were available primarily in America on Amazon.com, Target, and Walmart. Walmart didn't get them as early as Target. They did get them later on, and they were really getting a lot of them, mostly the classic Trek figures, in full, not the full assortment, but just full cases of like Khan or Spock or Kirk. And when they restocked, they were getting more of those, and it just kind of, the Next Generation and the Discovery figures weren't found as easily at Walmart as they were at Target, because they seem to be getting the full wave assortment mix of all three lines. So, okay, let's talk about 2023. Now, the Wave 2 that we were expecting wasn't the Wave 2 that Playmates announced. Wave 2, I guess you would call it, would be these Discovery figures based on new entertainment that was released recently, and they did get they were supposed to come out with season 2 pretty soon and a season 3. And so the Discovery figures actually started, they got delayed from November 22 to March 23, but they didn't actually start shipping until a couple months after that. And they are readily available on Amazon.com right now. I haven't heard any reports that any Walmart or Target have got those. Entertainment Earth also has those. They're also a primary wholesale distributor for e-tailers, so you might have seen them in your comic book shops and other online retailers like on eBay and stuff like that. All right, so as far as the, I guess you would call it Wave 3 or Star Trek Universe Wave 2, the figures 7 and 9, Q, Pike, and Geordi and Worf, where are those at? Alright, so in 2023, they did specifically say that they would be coming out in 23. And the original, a lot of people thought this line was going to be like a lot of toy lines where like every 90 days you get a new wave. There'd be like, 4 waves a year, something like that. Playmates didn't necessarily say that. They didn't commit to that. They did say that there would be another wave in the next year. And then later on, they said it would be coming out in June. So the Star Trek Universe figures were supposed to come out in June. There's also some other things that were expected to come out in June, like the Playmates Ninja Turtle Elite Series, which is a 6.5 scale figure with the disguise from the movie. Those first waves started hitting in January of 22, and people automatically assumed that the other 2 turtles, because they only did 2 of the 4 turtles in the first wave, that those would come out 6 months later, and they just started showing up like in August and some Targets, and still to this day have hit very lightly and maybe less than 5 or 10% of the Targets, and nobody's really seen those anywhere. So those are getting out. They're slowly trickling out. And the Wave 2 stuff, there is the ship. The Enterprise D has already been released, and the Communicator's already been released. And those came out around the same time this year as they did last year when Wave 1 came out. It's just the figures that haven't been spotted yet. And there were some replenishes at Target where they got more stock of the original Wave 1 figures around the same time that we were expecting these new Wave 2 figures to hit, but with different face paint. And if you look on the date codes on the back of the card, the date codes were also different. So they were new stock. They're being replenished. There's no actual proof or evidence whatsoever that anything has been canceled, that anything has been stopped. New stock is still coming in to retailers. Not Walmart, but I think Walmart's holding out for the new figures. And so the thing is, I really don't want to get into it too much where I have contacts that have retail licenses and talk to toy companies on a frequent basis. But I'm trying to wait until the rest of November, and if that happens where the figures still aren't out, then I'll have him talk to Playmates, because he does talk to different toy companies, especially Hasbro, Mattel, on a frequent basis. And he does have contacts within the toy community and within Playmates toys themselves. He's actually doing a documentary on Ninja Turtles Then and Now, and Playmates is part of that. And so there could be info coming up very soon. So most of the information that he gets from Hasbro, Mattel, other companies, I mean, he knows the stuff that's coming out over the next 2 years pretty much. And it is confidential information. It's like classified. He could lose his business if anybody knows who it is that's, leaking information, and he's not going to leak anything that would be something that doesn't need to be coming out, that they don't want out. So he could talk to Playmates Toys and ask permission to uh, record or just get general information. Are they coming out? Yes or no? Are they discontinued? Yes or no? And if they say yes, they are coming out, when? Is there a possibility you can give us a timeline? The second wave of figures, the what do you call them? The animated series Prodigy figures came out just a few months ago. Like, I think they were supposed to be released in March. I believe they came out in May or June or something like that. So there is a potential that these could come out in May or June of next year. And maybe that's just kind of the way they're doing it, like every 10 months. But it doesn't seem like that's what they're going to do. And for the people who are saying they're canceled, why would they invest in brand new technology and re-release something with the new paint job? From what I've understood from the people that I do know that, have tried to contact Playmates, they did say specifically that they wanted to test the waters to, they actually do pay attention to Facebook. They pay attention to social media. They are watching. So if you're complaining about something, or you think they look better with the new print technology that they're using, why would they invest that money if they were just going to discontinue them? Why would they just release those and say, okay, that's it, we're done? That doesn't make any sense. Plus, they have the license for a certain amount of time. So, it just doesn't make sense that they would be canceled. So, I don't think that they're canceled. I'm hoping that they're not. And they did show off, those 6 new figures at least. And so I'm hoping they're coming out. I mean, they invested in brand new sculpts for the Prodigy figures. All of those figures were 100% brand new. If you look at the figures that are being released here, Q is an all new sculpt, I think. I mean, he's got that big jacket, the hat, the head. His body might be the same as Picard or something like that underneath. 7 and 9, obviously female character. We don't have a female, so that's obviously a new sculpt. Pike looks different. We don't have a classic Trek uniform yet. Spock, I believe that's who's in blue. I'm not sure. I can't really see it clear enough but I believe that's from the movie and not the TV series. Geordi and Worf, they might be using the same molds as Riker and Data or whatever, but it just doesn't make sense that they would be discontinued. I really hope they're not. Again, I'm going to try to wait until November is over, because there have been rumors from Target employees that these are still in the system as a November release date. I know Targets do different things. They don't always do them all together at the same time. They have more than one distribution center, and the distribution centers get a certain amount of figures per, and etc. They haven't even hit the The Communicator and the Enterprise are available on Amazon.com. I believe they're available at Walmart.com. I'm not sure. Target.com, they are. And they have hit Target, but only small amount, and mostly on the eastern side of the United States, from what I've seen in like toy hunt videos and stuff like that. But I don't think I'm hoping there's nothing to be worried about here. I do believe that they're coming out. From all the reports, all the things that I've heard, they should be coming out. And if needed, if I don't hear anything by, say, Thanksgiving or so, then I'll probably contact them or have my friend contact them and see what kind of information they'll allow us to spill out. I'm a former retailer myself. I used to do this as a job, and I still have contacts within the toy community. So I will, and he will. I've already talked to him. If we don't hear, in the next couple of weeks, we'll get down to it. We'll try to get it like on a podcast or something where we can share that information with everybody. And hopefully by then these things will already be at Target anyways. The Enterprise is out, the Communicator's out. They've been getting new stock of new figures, so they should be coming. I don't think there's anything to worry about.